Hi, I'm Ariel Waldman. I'm a features writer with Dark Reading, and here I have Eric Geller, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm a senior reporter at Cybersecurity Dive.
Awesome. And today we are talking about IoT security. I'll start with some problems with IoT security that enterprises are facing. IoT devices are inherently insecure. They do not receive vulnerability patches and other updates. They also are built for long-lasting life cycles, which are difficult to manage. And there are a lot out there that are legacy, and that causes a lot of issues for enterprises as well. And as more attackers are also becoming more competent at hacking into IoT devices, they're not just deploying botnets anymore. They're using them to get into routers and gain entry to enterprises, which is becoming more alarming and a bigger concern for everyone. On the flip side, there's also manufacturing issues. A lot of manufacturers, they ship them with default passwords, and users don't know to change those passwords to more secure options, which is a big issue as well. Yeah, like a lot of things in cybersecurity, it's difficult to balance security with usability, and that's always an issue as well. They want to try to reduce user friction, but at the same time, that means sometimes security is lacking. Have you observed that as well, Eric?
Absolutely. That's a big trade-off. These companies want their products to be engaging and accessible, but at the same time, that often leads to a reduction in that focus on security because they don't want to be an impediment to the use of their product.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think there's just more and more IoT manufacturers and suppliers emerging on the market today, and they may not always be learning from past mistakes and to build security from the beginning. That's always important, but it's often not happening, especially with IoT manufacturers. Well, it is easier to do secure by design, but it's also expensive, and it's expensive to fix problems after the issue as well. It's also concerning for MedTech. A lot of medical tech are IoT devices, and they may not come with passwords on them to make it easier for the user, but at the same time, that just makes it so vulnerable, and attackers can take advantage of that. Have you noticed any legislation or new policies that are coming out to help with IoT security?
Yeah, so at the end of the last administration, the FCC kicked off a program called the U.S. Cyber Trust Mark, which is going to let companies submit their products for testing by government-approved labs. And if the tests pass, the company can put a label on their product that essentially says, this is U.S. government approved. It follows certain practices like having an end-of-life policy, like having guaranteed updates for a certain number of years. You can basically, as a consumer, go into a store or go on Amazon and see which products have this seal of approval on them, and you can scan a QR code on the box for information about how long will I be getting software updates, what is the manufacturer's process for applying patches, things like that. So the goal is to create something like the Energy Star program for home appliances, which tell consumers this product meets certain government set criteria for energy efficiency. The idea here is we're going to build something similar for cyber. It hasn't gotten off the ground yet because the new administration has started an investigation of the company that was put in charge of the program. Until that investigation concludes and until we find out what happens with that company that's been put in charge, we don't know when the program is going to kick off, if it will even be this year, if it will even be in the next few years. It's really unclear because we don't know what this investigation is going to find. But the investigation is about alleged connections between the company that was put in charge and the Chinese government. The FCC is very concerned about companies with ties to China doing this work of auditing and inspecting telecommunications equipment, which includes IoT, because it has like a radio antenna in it for wireless communication. It's within the FCC's purview. So this program was intended to secure that equipment, but it's being held up right now over fears that the company in charge has connections to the Chinese government that are considered very risky. So we'll have to see what happens there. But this program was considered the best effort to kind of put a U.S. government seal of approval on secure IoT products and encourage companies to want to build secure IoT products in the first place.
That's awesome. That's really important. As we were saying, the manufacturers don't always put security first, and they really need like an outside pressure or force maybe to incentivize that and force everyone to be on the same page there, because everyone's on a different page right now, it seems like. And if their competitors are not following secure protocols, then most likely the other manufacturers won't as well. I can see are the Chinese issues related to the Soho routers as well, and how the Chinese nation state attackers were found in the Soho routers and things like that, the IoT devices. Maybe that's a concern from a Chinese standpoint.
Well, I think that the government is really concerned about this company having to turn over information to China because it has a presence in China. And if the company has information about what products are safe and what products are not safe, and if it's required to give information to China, that could mean that China is getting its hands on information about these products that are going through testing. Now, that's just speculation at this point, but that's the kind of thing that the government is worried about.
Yeah, definitely. How likely do you think this is to pass? You know, you said it's been a while, and the investigation will take a long time, and I'm sure widespread adoption of this will take even longer. Seems like security is just a bit slow. The progress is a bit slow.
Yeah, I mean, once the investigation is over, we could see the next steps move quickly if the FCC decides that it's comfortable with this company still being in charge. But the good thing is it doesn't have to go through Congress or anything like that, because it's just a program that the FCC set up on its own authority. But they still have a bunch of steps to complete. They've got to approve the draft testing standards that lay out the expectations for the testing process. So a lot of little minor bureaucratic things like that. And then potentially, if the investigation decides, okay, we're comfortable with this company being in charge, we could see the program get off the ground within a year. This is the big stumbling block right now. There are other things to be done, but they're not as ambitious or problematic from a kind of logistical standpoint. They're minor paperwork things at this point.
That's good. Are there any other legislations or policies that the U.S. has been pushing, or the U.K.?
Well, right now in Europe, we're getting ready for the launch of the Cyber Resilience Act, which sets requirements for companies that make all kinds of connected products. And cybersecurity is part of that. IoT devices are going to be covered by that. And what we should expect to see in the coming years is companies that sell products in Europe meeting those requirements and then going back to the U.S. and selling the same products that are just as secure. And depending on whether or not this FCC program gets off the ground, they may or may not even be able to say to the world or to U.S. consumers, hey, our products are safe, you should use them. If this FCC program launches, they'll be able to put a nice, clean little label on their product, and that will tell businesses and consumers who are buying these products, I should buy from this company. If the program hasn't launched yet, they can't put that label on there, and then they don't have anything to differentiate themselves in the market from companies that are not trying to meet these standards. So look for, over the coming years, manufacturers wanting to show that they're doing the right thing, both in Europe, where they already have to do that, and in the U.S., where it's voluntary.
Are there anything companies can do now in the meantime, while we're kind of waiting for these new regulations to take effect to secure their IoT?
They could certainly look at the draft testing standards and figure out if they would be able to meet those requirements. These are not like strange or surprising requirements. It's pretty basic things like being able to support patching and being able to support auditing, basic functions that you would want any IoT device to have. So a responsible manufacturer has probably already been talking to trade associations and maybe even the FCC directly about participating in this program. What I would say is that a lot of the companies that are most concerning in terms of their products being part of these big cyber attacks, it's not really Cisco or Avanti or Juniper, although their products have been hacked. The bigger concern is some of these smaller Asian router makers that are not as involved in some of these conversations in the US about cybersecurity. And the government is really concerned that they're not going to participate. They're not going to submit their products for testing. They may not even know about this program. And what that means is if you're buying the cheapest router available, you're probably going to end up buying it from one of these Chinese companies or Taiwanese companies or companies based in Asia that don't have the same involvement in some of these cybersecurity programs that the U.S. is creating. So if that happens, those companies may not be improving their cybersecurity the way we want them to, and businesses that buy from those companies are just as exposed as they were before.
Yeah. Getting everyone on the same page is always difficult. Just starting the discussions is important, but taking action takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
Is there anything enterprises can do in the meantime? Like, I know authentication is important, changing those default passwords. Anything else that you recommend?
Well, the big thing these days is paying attention to all things identity. So changing passwords, restricting user access, ensuring that you have alerts turned on if you see suspicious behavior. I'm sure any business watching this is going to know that their vendors are pushing AI as a way to automatically detect suspicious behavior. And it is worth looking into whether those solutions are right for any particular business. They're not always going to be right for any particular company, but sometimes they can speed up that process of finding anomalous activity. And sometimes that anomalous activity is the hack. So you do want to be aware of that stuff.
Yeah, monitor, make sure. I know it's harder for small to medium-sized businesses, but it is important these days. They can gain such sensitive access to sensitive data there.
Yeah.
Thank you for having the conversation with me on IoT security.
Thank you.